Welcome to the Drill Down, in-depth answers to oilfield questions. I'm Richard Spears.
And I'm John Spears.
And a week ago when we did the first of the two-part podcast here, we talked about some of the decisions or the arguments that the board or the management team of an oil company is going to have to make as they are confronted with 2022.
That's right.
Do they go to the shareholders and say, we would like to raise CapEx? And by the way, what was your CapEx raise number?
35, 40%, something like that, to average, typical.
And year to year. And but what that means is that from the low quarter of 2021 to the high quarter of 2022, that's a 2x growth. So if they spent $100 billion, $25 billion that quarter, it's $50 billion at the high quarter of the following year.
That's right.
So that's the way things seem to be trending. But the management teams and the boards of oil companies need to make an argument, an appeal to their shareholders, so that their shareholders will also think it's a good idea.
Absolutely right. Keep that price up.
So you got the oil companies making these decisions, but on the other side of the deal is the assumption that oil companies always make is that the service companies will then go do what they're being asked to do.
If I build it, it will be there. Yes, right. Or they will come. Right. So
again, I want to drill not 10 wells this year, I want to drill 20. So I'll just get a drilling contract.
So that's an interesting point. So there's inside that, say, 35, 40% increase in CapEx, there's going to be 10% or so of price increase inside that, right? I mean, that's what we're seeing in terms of...
That one's easy.
Right, yeah. So inside those numbers, we're already seeing costs rise. And I think that will only continue next year, right? Yeah. So the service industry is sort of on that track already, but I think the more fundamental point is, will just the capacity of the industry grow to accommodate, say, a 25% increase in activity across the board? Right?
Yeah, because for example, I spent part of I spent several days with the CEO of a drilling contractor.
Okay.
And he said during that time that all of his available drilling rigs that were kitted out to satisfy the demands of today's drilling, they're all busy.
Sure.
And so for him to put one more of his rigs to work required him to put money into it.
Sure.
And I'm making up a number, $3 million. So this might be a rig that...
reactivate a cold stacked rig.
Yeah, and it's not even so much, let's lubricate all the, moving parts.
Yeah.
It's to upgrade that rig so that it can drill those, 6-well pads and drill them really fast. So
meet the performance that the operator would expect. Yep.
The operator every year just ups that requirement, and you see drilling efficiencies these days. They're just crazy high.
So for that kind of expenditure, if that's anywhere near the ballpark, say $3 million, something like that, and if day rates for rigs are headed toward $30,000 a day for a top-class rig, cash margins are maybe 10 grand a day, so that takes 3 years to recoup. Did I say that right? Yeah, something like that. 300 days. I'm sorry, 300 days. 300 days. Yeah.
So
a full year
to get the $3 million back.
Yes, right. And so that contractor is going to want that operator to employ his rig for at least a full year and maybe longer, right? In order that he is satisfied that he can recoup that investment he has to make to put that rig back to work.
Right, because right now, he doesn't want to put another rig to work.
Yeah, if I come to you and I say, listen, Rich, I want that rig, but I'm only going to need it to drill one pad, so it's going to take you a month, right?
The answer is clearly no.
Yeah, because again,
good luck.
Right. It's going to take, with supply chain problems, Lord knows how long to get that rig back.
6 months? 3 months?
So that's an issue. So that suggests that if I'm a service firm, and in this case a drilling contractor, and I'm getting asked to bring a rig back to work, that operator needs to be willing to commit to at least a couple years, right?
Yeah.
So here's another way to think of it, I believe. A rig under contract will drill 24, 25 holes a year, $5-6 million per well. So that the total
6 times 25 is
$150 million that operator that he needs to support a rig active for a full year. Right?
Yeah.
So if I'm a smaller guy and maybe my capital budget is $25 million, right? I'm going to have a tough time, right, finding a rig.
How am I going to convince, our friends here down Helmerich and Payne,
yes,
to roll a rig out for a one-well pad?
Right. They're going to have to be very convinced that there's maybe other operators, but willing to, line up behind it, right?
And maybe a company of the size of Helmerich and Payne, if they've got 150 drilling rigs out there on long-term contracts, they're willing to take 10 maybe and go, well, I can go pad to pad on a handful of these. But that's not going to be the normal situation for every drilling contractor. But as you and I were talking earlier, getting a rig to work for you for a year might be the easy problem to solve, because what's the hard problem?
Well, the harder problem will be the issue of frac spreads or frac crews counts.
Because one drilling rig represents how many frac spreads of work?
About a half year's worth of work. So one full year of rig work is about a half a year's worth of frac spread work. So again, if now that operator comes to me as a frac service company and says, I want to sign a rig up a frac spread up, and again, the frac service firm is looking at, the cost of reactivating a spread, right? He's going to say, well, man, I want you to sign that thing up and have it working a full year for me, right? So now the operator has to say, well, I've got to have 2 rigs working in order to keep that one frac spread, to keep that my frac service guy happy to bring his units back.
No longer $150 million. It's
double that.
$300 million.
$300 million, ish. So now again, that begins to get into some serious money. So here's another just handy rule, right? Among public traded companies anyway, if you look at the ratio between what the capital spending is today and what their total revenues are, the capital spending dollars are about 20% of their revenues. So next year it might be higher. Maybe CapEx will represent a quarter of their revenues. But so if I'm going to put $300 million of capital to work to keep 2 rigs and 1 frac spread busy, my revenues as a company are going to need to be in the order of $1.2 to $1.5 billion, right?
So what oil company is of that size?
Well, there's a lot of public. Most of your publics are clearly that big, right? But we also know that right now, anyway, about 80% of the rig count increase that we've been experiencing, the net numbers, since roughly mid-year, have come from operators who were not busy and now have a rig working, and they may not even have a rig working, continually. It may just be coming in, and then the rig goes to work for a second guy. So clearly, it's a lot of the rig increase we're seeing is coming from the smaller, privately held companies and so forth. They're not generating $1 billion worth of revenue, but so again, those folks are engaged in discussions with the oil service firms about employing a rig or a frac crew for just a partial year, right? 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, something like that. Yeah, so that's where the decision on CapEx for oil service firms gets to be pretty complicated, because they have to be pretty confident that there's going to be a broad increase in activity for them to just sort of on faith get out there and put dollars to work bringing equipment back into the field.
I think it, just like everything, it bifurcates the market.
Mm-hmm.
And so just in the world of hydraulic fracturing, and again, we're not on the board of Liberty.
Right.
We're not on the board of ProFrac. We don't have investments in either one. So we certainly have friends at all those places. But just imagine you're Liberty, and their strategy tends to be, I want to get long-term contracts for big oil companies that span an arc of time, because I've got 20 or 30 frac spreads that I want to lock up, and I want to be able to come to my investors and say, look, I've got this runway here that I can see.
Sure, it's a risk management approach.
Yeah, but you look over at the deal that was just announced, where the Wilkes family via ProFrac buys their old company back, FTSI, for $400 and something million, pays off all the debt, puts it inside ProFrac. Here's 2 companies combined, and the DNA of both those companies, even though they're very happy to take a long-term contract, these companies have always been very responsive to the marketplace. They've been the ones with a frac spread that'll go to work for you at the highest rate possible.
Yes, right. Again, that's what it's going to take, right, to have a crew that can come out on call, basically.
You bet.
Yeah.
You're going to pay me a premium for me to have this availability for you.
Yeah.
So for a while, for a season, you're going to see a company like ProFrac and other service companies that behave like that, having outsized returns on their employed capital because they get to win that pricing. They're right on the forefront of pricing. When everything's turned down, they're also on the forefront of that. But for a period like this, it looks like a really smart way to go.
It'll be interesting to see if other service firms shift their risk profile, I'll call it that, with regard to their contracting strategy, right? And to take advantage of this element coming into the marketplace among operators that don't need, that aren't there for long-term commitments. They're in and out just because of the size of the budget that they have to spend. So there's another issue that I think service firms probably are thinking about, and one is, does technology play a role in changing how things are getting done over the next year? So do I sense, if I'm a service firm, is something about the way wells are getting drilled or completed changing, and how might that affect my utilization? I don't see a lot going on that is going to speed up or even slow down the process of drilling or completion. But I think that would be something that a lot of service firms would have to have in the back of their minds to say, listen, is there something there we need to be catching?
Yeah, the oil companies, certainly in West Texas or the Permian Basin, are cramming electricity down the throats of their suppliers. It starts with drilling rigs and frac crews, but it also is in let's run the oil field. Let's run the pumps. Right. Let's run the compressors on electricity. And that poses a problem for the service sector, which is, I've always run this thing off of something else.
For sure.
And now I've got to run it off of electricity, and that requires a capital investment by me. So you've got to pay me in order to get me to get off my butt and electrify my own, gear here.
Sure.
So that you can get what you want.
There's one other question I think that besides technology, that service firms, as they hear operators talk about raising capital spending, what their revenue forecasts are and everything, it's got to be the question of consolidation. First, consolidation among their customers, among oil companies, right? In the past, we've always seen consolidation among operators occur at the low point of a cycle, right? Revenues are down. Some operators are over-levered. Their balance sheets are a mess. They put themselves up for sale, and a white knight who isn't quite as highly levered comes riding in and buys a company. And this has always happened in the past at low points in the cycle. Well, we're far enough along in the recovery. We're not at a low point anymore, and it's hard for me to see. The balance sheet problem is cleaning up almost everywhere you look. So there is an argument, I think, that maybe some oil companies say, listen, I'm not going to raise my capital spending, but I can get bigger by buying somebody else, and maybe that's how I deploy my capital and deliver the returns to shareholders. I can still cut overhead and save on money that way. And so if I'm a service firm and I'm thinking that some of that might be going on, that clearly is going to impact how I position myself for next year, because I might be losing a client. I might be gaining a client if there's consolidation that takes place. As the industry is thinking about it, and it was Hot Take of the Day said there's still too many CEOs per barrel of oil, and there's probably too many CEOs per drilling rig. Yeah, and so consolidation is upon us. Well, and we all know that as the operator group consolidates, that drives consolidation among the service sector, right? So I think that will be another theme that we'll probably see a surprising amount of next year too. Just again, the way the industry is evolving here in the U.S., I think that people are will continue to push for ways to lower their costs of operation and at the same time, deliver a return that the shareholder would appreciate. So,
and the word was appreciate as opposed to depreciate.
Fair enough.
Hey, so you ready for the new puzzler?
More than ever.
And as we know, about 2/3 of the people who tune into the podcast are actually here to listen to the puzzler. So here's the new puzzler.
Okay.
So my friend Sandy has a jet. He has not had a jet before, but now he's got a jet.
Okay.
And he keeps it parked at one of those airports on the west side of Houston.
Okay.
And so this airport, let's just say it's the executive airport of Katy or whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay.
They have just come to Sandy and said, what we're thinking of doing is installing a gigantic one of these things like
conveyor belt.
A conveyor belt.
Yes. Okay.
Instead of the runway.
In place of the runway.
In place of the runway.
Big conveyor
and here's the feature of this gigantic conveyor belt.
Yes.
It's going to go the exact same speed as the wheels of a jet, except in the opposite direction.
Okay. I'm with you.
So if the wheels, for example, are going 100 miles an hour to the north, it's going to be going the opposite direction at 100 miles. It's going to exactly match that. And so Sandy's question is,
okay, yes.
Will the jet take off?
Okay, I gotcha. Right.
So it's a giant conveyor belt.
Yes.
It exactly matches the speeds of the wheels.
So the answer is either yes, it will take off, or no, it will take off.
Yeah. So Sandy's question will my jet, because he only just got it.
No, I understand.
Will my jet still take off? And so if you think you know the answer to this puzzler,
yes,
send it by email to drilldownshow@gmail.com. And I'm sure that we're going to get so many arguments because it's really one of two things.
Yes.
Yes, it takes off.
Right.
No, it doesn't take off. We're going to read we're going to pick the right answer from random of the hundreds that we get and read it on.
Explain your reasoning. There you go.
This one does come with explain your reasoning.
Yeah, there you go.
It's just a simple yes or no. Not going to get on. Anyway, thanks for listening to Drill Down. I'm Richard Spears.
And I'm John Spears.